The wind rolled low across the prairie, bending the grass as if even the land knew how heavy her heart was. The widowed Apache woman stood near the corral fence, arms crossed tight against her chest, dark eyes fixed on the horizon. She had learned not to look too long at men, not to trust the way their gazes lingered. Ever since her husband's death, desire had followed her like a shadow, unwanted, misunderstood, and always painful. When the rancher approached, boots slow in the dust, she didn't turn to face him right away. She could already feel the question burning in her throat, years of resentment sharpening it into a blade. "Rancher, do you just want my body like everyone else's?" she asked at last, her voice steady but edged with anger. The words hung between them, heavier than the coming storm. He stopped a few steps away, removing his hat, as if the land itself demanded respect in that moment. He didn't smile. He didn't reach for her. The accusation struck him deep, not because it was unfair, but because he understood where it came from. He had seen the way others looked at her, seen how quickly kindness turned into expectation. He took a breath and spoke carefully, knowing one wrong word could send her walking away forever. "I won't pretend I don't see you," he said quietly. "But I didn't. Come here to take something from you," he told her, about the silence of his house after his wife died, about mornings where grief sat heavier than hunger, about learning the hard way that loneliness can make people reckless. "I know what it's like to be reduced to what someone thinks you should give," he added. She finally turned toward him then, surprise flickering across her face. He kept his distance, letting space be his proof. He didn't ask her to believe him. He didn't defend himself with promises. Instead, he listened. As her anger spilled out, how men had offered comfort with strings attached. How pity had felt like another kind of theft. How love, once broken, leaves sharp edges behind. When her voice faltered, he stayed silent, allowing the wind to carry her pain away piece by piece. For the first time since she had lost her husband, no one tried to fix her, claim her, or hurry her healing. As the sky darkened and the first drops of rain fell, she realized something unfamiliar had settled in her chest. Not desire, not fear, but the fragile beginning of being seen. Night settled over the ranch slowly, the kind of quiet that made memories louder. The fire cracked and hissed as sparks rose into the dark sky, and the widowed Apache woman sat across from the rancher with her hands folded in her lap, staring into the flames. She hadn't planned to speak, but the warmth and the stillness loosened something inside her. Grief has a way of surfacing when the world grows quiet, and tonight it refused to stay buried. She began to talk, her voice low at first, telling him about her husband, as if he were still close enough to hear. She spoke of the way he laughed during the hunt, how he used to tease her when she took herself too seriously, how his presence once made the world feel balanced. The firelight caught the moisture in her eyes, but she did not look away. She told him about the day she lost him, about the sound that left her chest when she realized she was alone, and how from that moment on, people only saw her loss or her body, but never the woman who still lived beneath the pain. The rancher listened without interrupting. He didn't offer pity or advice. He added another piece of wood to the fire when the flames dipped, keeping it steady, as if tending the fire was the only response needed. When she paused, gathering herself, he spoke gently. He told her he wasn't there to replace anyone, that love didn't work that way. "What you had was real," he said. "Nothing I could ever offer would erase that." His words didn't feel like a promise or a claim. They felt like respect, and that unsettled her more than flattery ever could. She had grown used to men wanting something from her. This man seemed content simply to be present. The night air grew colder, and still he didn't move closer unless she did. As the fire burned low, she stood, brushing dust from her skirt, ready to retreat back into the safety of distance. Then she hesitated. The loneliness she felt wasn't as sharp with him there, and that frightened her. "Stay," she said quietly, the word trembling between a request and a challenge. He nodded and remained by the fire, eyes lowered, giving her control over the moment. She walked away toward the shadows, but her steps were lighter than before. Behind her the fire continued to burn, steady and patient, much like the man she had left beside it. For the first time in a long while, the night did not feel like an enemy. Morning came with work, not words. The widowed Apache woman found herself beside the rancher in the open fields. The quiet between them no longer heavy but careful, like fresh tracks in the dirt that neither wanted to disturb too quickly. They worked side by side, mending fence posts, moving in an unspoken rhythm. He showed her how to read the tension in the wire, how to know when the post would hold. She showed him how to watch the wind, how the grass leaned differently when weather was turning. Trust, she realized, did not arrive in grand gestures. It came in shared labor and steady presence. As the days passed, she noticed how he never crowded her space. When their hands brushed, he didn't linger. When she laughed, surprised by herself, he smiled without claiming credit. Small moments began to soften her guard, his patience with a restless horse, the way he listened more than he spoke, the respect he showed for her strength rather than treating it as something unusual. Still, fear stayed close. Wanting again felt dangerous. Wanting and losing had once shattered her world. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the land faster than expected. Thunder cracked overhead, forcing them into the barn for shelter. Rain hammered the roof, loud enough to trap them in silence. The closeness made her chest tighten. This was where mistakes happened, where longing blurred judgment. She turned to him, eyes sharp but honest. "If this becomes something," she said, voice steady though her hands trembled, "it must be more than want. I won't be taken lightly." Not again. He didn't step closer. He didn't swear devotion. He met her gaze and answered simply, "Then we build it slow, strong enough to last." His calm certainty grounded her, not because it promised safety, but because it honored her choice. When the storm passed, sunlight spilled back into the barn. Something inside her had shifted. She wasn't healed, not fully, but she felt less guarded. Outside, the land smelled clean and new, washed by rain. She reached for his hand before she could talk herself out of it. The gesture was tentative, a question rather than an invitation. He took her hand gently, not pulling her closer, just walking beside her as they stepped back into the open fields. In that moment, she understood that trust was a trail, slow, uneven, and worth walking only with someone willing to match her pace. The sun rose pale and quiet over the ranch, spreading light across the corral where dust still held the memory of yesterday's work. The widowed Apache woman stood there alone for a long moment, breathing in the morning, steadying herself. This place had witnessed her anger, her doubt, and the first fragile cracks in her armor. She had spent the night awake, weighing fear against hope, knowing that walking away would be easier than choosing again. Easier but lonelier. When she heard boots behind her, she didn't turn right away. The rancher stopped a respectful distance back, just as he always did. He waited, unsure whether this morning would bring distance or something deeper. At last she faced him, her expression calm but resolved. There was no fire in her eyes now, no challenge, only truth. "I've spent so long protecting what was left of me," she said quietly. "After my husband died, everyone thought they knew what I needed. Some wanted to save me, others wanted to use me. No one asked what I chose." She lifted her chin. "I was afraid you'd be the same." He listened, heart pounding, saying nothing, letting her finish. "I see now that you never tried to take," she continued. "You waited. You worked beside me. You let me decide." Her voice softened, but her strength remained. "That matters more than you know." He swallowed, emotion tightening his chest. "I never wanted to be your answer," he said. "Only someone worthy of standing beside you, if you'd have me." She stepped closer, closing the distance on her own terms. The morning light revealed the lines of grief they both carried, but also something new, possibility. "Then stay," she said. "Not as a rescuer, not as a replacement for what I lost. Stay as a partner, willing to walk with me, not ahead of me." A slow smile touched his face, full of relief and quiet joy. He tipped his hat, a simple gesture, but one heavy with respect. "I can do that," he replied. Every day, they stood together as the land awakened around them, the future wide and uncertain. There were no promises of ease, no illusions that pain would never return. But there was choice freely given, and a bond built on patience rather than desire alone. As they turned back toward the ranch house side by side, She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not the rush of passion, but the calm strength of choosing someone who saw her whole and stayed anyway.